Hey everyone, in this tutorial I would like to show you my favorite neck edging. It's my double brimmed neck edge. What I mean by this is, I have you take a closer look. Can you see this beautiful finish at the bottom of my neck ribbing? When I turn it around, you'll see on the inside, it looks exactly as smooth as on the outside. This is my special technique that I like to use when I want this extra perfect finish, or on, let's say, on a cardigan, when the cardigan opens up in the front and you could see the inside. So this looks always pristine and perfect. And now I would like to show you how that works. It's easier than you think.
Okay, let's go. As you can see, I already prepared a little sample, my mini sweater. I put my needles in here, little markers, so you can see the different section on the sweater's neck. This would be your bound off or cast on stitches. On the side, we have edge stitches, and then we have this little round area. And in the middle, we usually have bound off stitches or cast on stitches. Same thing on the other side. Usually the pattern will tell you how many stitches you have in the back, on the side, and in the middle. Or sometimes they only tell you, let's say, pick up 62 stitches, for example, in total. So what I do to get an even amount of stitches, I break my work into half, and then I would pick up 31 stitches on one side and 31 stitches on the other side. But usually in the pattern, it will tell you how many stitches to pick up. All we need now is our working yarn. I'll pick the different colors so you can see each step much better. And we need 2 sets of circular needles. My preferred method for smaller circumferences is the magic loop technique. I guess you guys are familiar with this technique. If not, you'll see it, how it's done in this video as well. The reason why I picked 2 different circular needles, it helps you visually to see which part I'm actually knitting on. Let's say I'm going to use this red cable needle for the inside of our double brimmed neckline, and the blue cable for the outside. In case you're interested, these are here needles, and these are Chiago needles, one of my favorite circular needles. Okay, let's go. First thing we need is, of course, our working yarn. I'm gonna take my yarn. Okay, first things first, we need a little slip knot. I'm leaving a little tail behind so I can weave in the ends later. Make a slip knot, just a simple slip knot. And I'm taking my needle for the inside of the brim, because it's double brim, we need an inside and an outside. This is the first stitch on the inside. I'm put it in the back of my work. I'm starting at the back of the right shoulder, taking my working needle, and we're going to start picking up stitches on both needles at the same time. First of all, we have to identify where we are. I'm actually putting a little swatch I've knitted before and use it in order so you can see better. Okay, we're starting. This is the beginning of our round. I put a little marker, And usually I pick my stitches straight from the stitch. So I go, you see, this is my cast off or cast on edge, and I go right under it, this cast on edge, and pick up the first stitch right from that first knit. Actually, it's brioche stitch. So from this rib, from the knit stitch. In order to help me, I'm using a little crochet hook because sometimes it's difficult to do things at the same time. You can, and it totally works, but in order on video, it's always better. I tried it before and sometimes it slipped, so it's kind of annoying. So what we do, we keep our working needle here. I love my place always organized. So this is the end of the tail. I bring my yarn forward so I can grab it. What we want to do, we want to put a stitch on our working needle. So I'm going right in there. You see this knit stitch? Go inside, pick up my yarn and pull it through. Take my working needle, put this stitch through, pull on. So now we have a stitch in front and in the back. Let me try if I can zoom in a little bit more. Yes, so you can see better. The next stitch would be the pearl, the brioche pearl rib, and I want to pick up a stitch from there. So look at it. We have to identify, and you see these two little pearl bumps, and I want to go right in between. I'm not going to take a chance. I'm using my crochet hook again because it is much easier. Go right in between. Now, working yarn is on top of the needle, and we want to create a stitch on the back needle as well. So I'm gonna take my crochet hook, take the yarn and pull it through just around the back needle. Take the yarn and put that stitch on my working needle. Next stitch would be a knit stitch right there. I'm just gonna do a couple of stitches with my crochet hook, go right inside. Working yarn is on the back underneath that needle. So in order to create a stitch, we have to put it over. So come around, take the yarn, pull it through, and put it on our working needle. Ta-da! Here we go. We have 3 stitches on the back needle and 3 stitches in on the front needle. And you already can see the cast on edge is going to disappear between these 2 sides. So that's a perfect spot to hide any loose ends or any imperfections. We just lose it in between these 2 sides. Okay, let's go. Next step would be a pearl stitch. Working yarn is above the back needle, so we go inside. This time I'm going to try it with my working needle. Go through the pearl stitch, catch the yarn, and I'm going to pull it through. Here we go. Okay. Oops, I think I missed it. I'm going back into it again. Catch the yarn, and here we go. 4 stitches on the needle. So now I'm going to show you how you can make life much easier. Of course, you can use your crochet hook, but You can pull on your circular needle, and we just from now on we are using just the cable of the needle, because this is, as you can see, much more flexible. We don't have to fight with two sets of the needle. Okay, let's go. And I hope it works better now since I promised. Okay, next stitch would be a knit stitch. You can see the cable is over on top of your working knot, working yarn. We want to create a stitch on the cable as well. So we have to pick up the yarn from above around the cable. And here we go. And you can see this is much easier now. You can see in the back, created a new stitch. And now you can already see it's creating a little pattern, these little V pattern. You like one stitch goes this way, the other one goes, and it's always kind of changing. And the matter of it for this being is because we're taking the yarn from underneath and the yarn from above. So, but in the end, we're just gonna knit it straight from the cable, and I show you how to do it that it ends up looking like this on your needle. But don't you worry for now, we're just gonna go ahead and create the stitches for the back. So yarn is over on top of your cable. So what we have to do, we're gonna go inside the next stitch, go under the cable, pick the yarn, and knit it through. Next stitch, go in between the little V's, go through the V. Yarn is underneath the yarn, so we have to take it from above and pull it through that stitch. And now it's really fun because nothing's in the way and nothing's gonna stop us from here on. Okay, so go in between these two little purl bumps, go right in there, take the yarn from underneath your working needle goes underneath the cable, picks the yarn, and you pull it through. And actually in this fashion, I'm gonna move my way forward to the next marker. This indicates shoulder from shoulder. It's a straight line. So we're going in between the little V, pick up the yarn. It comes from underneath the cable, pull it through, and we've created a new stitch. Next one, purl stitch, go right in between. Yarn is on top of the cable, go underneath, and I pull it through. Another stitch. I'm just going to work a little along so you can really see and memorize the whole thing. Next stitch, into the V. The yarn's coming from underneath the cable, so I have to go on top, pick up the yarn, and go through. Next stitch is the purl stitch. Yarn on top of the cable, go underneath, pick the yarn, and pull it through. Next stitch, gonna go in the V, the middle of the V, yarns underneath the cable, go through and pull the yarn through. And now you can see how the cable is really your friend, because you can move it around, boss it around the way you want it. And yeah, it just helps you to get moving. Okay, you can see we're creating our little pattern in the back. Looks actually quite pretty. Okay, go between these two purl bumps, go underneath, yarn is on top, catch the yarn and pull it through. Next rib is a knit rib, go in between the two V's, pick the yarn. Yarn's coming from underneath, so I have to go over the cable and pick it and pull it through. Yeah, here we go. Next stitch is the purl rib, so I have to go in here. Yarn's on top. I have to go underneath the cable and pick up the yarn. Okay, we're almost there. Next stitch, because these are all increases, so the next stitch I need is this one. I go in here, yarn's coming from underneath, picking the yarn and pulling it through. Another purl rib between two purl bumps, yarn's on top, going from underneath the cable, picking up the yarn and pulling it through. And now we reached, actually I kind of tricked you into the end of the shoulder this way, but the real end is here. And I'm just going inside the V, yarns underneath the cable, and I'm pulling it through. So let's see what we've done so far. Can you see how beautiful this looks? The stitches, now you can really see what I meant. The stitches are really growing out of these ribs. So it looks like we never actually cast it off or cast it on. It's just in one go. So we can take off this marker. We leave this marker because this is the beginning of the round. And remember, always pick up the stitches that are recommended in your pattern. Just for a little info, I've knitted this little piece top down. So I started in the back and then in the end, I picked up stitches from the shoulder and knitted straight down this way. So we're gonna turn the work. I'm gonna just open it up a little bit. I'm gonna remove this for a second to show where we're going. Can you see? Usually when I'm working with brioche patterns, doesn't matter if it's fisherman's rib or full-on brioche, I use these little knots, like a garter stitch edge for all of my fisherman or brioche patterns. Reason being is because one of these bombs creates or tells me two rows or two rounds, or actually two rows is one row, because in brioche patterns you always have one row where you pick up or stitch with yarn over and you don't knit that stitch. So two rows create one visible row that you creates these little V's. These little V's are actually created by knitting two rows or two rounds. So what we have to do in my pattern, as I told you, I knit a lot of brioche patterns. In my pattern, you would pick up in this area, you would pick up one stitch always in between these little purl bumps, as you can see, and this would be the perfect gauge for my neckband. But usually, I mean, hold on to your pattern, keep what your pattern tells you and what's recommended for your gauge. Okay, so here we go. You see our yarn is, put this back in there so you can see better. So the yarn is on top of the cable. So what I have to do, I have to identify where I'm coming from, and this little strand, because you can see in between the knots there's like two little strands. We just want to go underneath these two right in there, and then we have to pick up the yarn from underneath the cable in order to create a stitch on the cable. Can you see? Perfect. First one. This is really foolproof from now on because you really can't miss the spots where you're picking up your stitches from. Okay, next gap between the two purl bombs. Yarn is coming from underneath. I have to go over and pick up a strand. The next gap, yarn's on top from underneath. And this is really fun because you just go along. Here you go. Next one. And keep remembering the pattern from underneath or from above. Always changing. You can still see the pattern is continuing. So next gap. Here we go. Right in between these two bombs. Pick up the yarn and pull it through. Now we are close to the next marker. Go right in between underneath because this yarn is coming from above. It's over my little cable. Go underneath the cable. Create a new stitch on both sides. Okay, so taking off your marker. Put it aside. And this is the little round area. Sometimes it's created, I love to use decreases in any kind of rib pattern because I love the pattern that it creates. It kind of makes this beautiful rib. So it looks very architectural. So that's one of my favorite things in these kind of patterns. So same thing, even for this round area. Sometimes in this area, you also would work with bound off stitches because in the, like the pattern might say bind off 2 stitches, then bind off 1 stitch and so on. You know what I'm talking about. So in this case, we have to go right in between again, 2 purl bombs and pick up the yarn. Yarn is again on top. I have to go between and pick it from underneath. And you see, like, I'm kind of really wrapping the yarn around that back needle or back cable. Some of you probably know this provisional cast on where you're using, I think it's called Turkish cast on. You just kind of wrap on both sides and then you can start, basically this is what it is. You can knit in this to this side and in this direction. So that's basically what it is. Only thing that is different, we have our edge stitches or cast on edge right in between. So let's continue. Yarns underneath. I have to go through those purl bombs, take the yarn, pull it through, go underneath. And notice how I'm really working with my little cable because it really helps me like to maneuver the whole thing. And this is like a really tricky spot. Most of you guys know it. It doesn't matter. Sometimes you have it in a sock heel or under when you're knitting from the top down and you're casting on new stitches for your arm. You sometimes get this dreaded hole. So what I'm doing, I'm taking this away so you can have a little bit more visible contrast. Some people, I mean, usually we would have to pick up something from this strand, 2 strands here, but then again, it's going to create a really big hole there. So what I'm doing in those cases, I usually don't think in, let's say, like in a orthodox technique. What I'm doing is very visual. So I'm trying to pick up a thread that's going to close that hole. So I'm just kind of play by ear and see what's happening. Let's say I would take up this piece of yarn and bingo, that's the one I want, because when we pull at a strand of yarn, you can see it's moving somewhere else. So if I pull here, it's gonna move over there. So if I look at it, this looks kind of beautiful to me. So we're using this. I go, yarn's coming from underneath, put back my little swatch, pick up the yarn, and then I'm going over the needle, pick up the yarn from underneath, and pull it through that loop that I created. And as you can see, it looks pretty damn good, I'd say. Now I can get rid of the next marker, toss it aside, and from now on we have a bound off edge again, bound off or cast on, depending on in which direction you knitted your little sweater or whatever. Okay, so the next stitch I have to pick up from, this is from our little purl rib. So now I'm going inside the knit stitch again. Yarn's coming from above, so I'm going underneath and pull the yarn through. And as you can see, this looks really beautiful. So and then always remember, we're going to knit the back side, and the back, if I put it on it, it's gonna pull this stitch also really tight. So like it's gonna look perfect later on, but I'll show you when we get to the back side, you'll see what I mean. Okay, we're just gonna finish the front till the next marker, and then I'm gonna finish the whole thing because I think you guys already understood what I'm talking about. Okay, let's go and recap everything. Next is going to be a purl ridge. So I'm going in between these two purl stitches, yarns underneath. So I'm gonna take it from above, pull it through, new stitch created, knit stitch, go in between the V, pick up the yarn from underneath to wrap the yarn around the back cable, purl stitch, in between, wrap it around, pull it through, next stitch, knit stitch, go right in between here in the V, yarns over the needle, so I'm going underneath the cable, go underneath it, pick up the yarn and knit that stitch. Next purl, go right in there, yarn's coming from under the cable, I'm going above, pull the yarn through. Next it's gonna knit, going underneath because yarn's coming from above, coming from underneath, picking the yarn, pulling it through. So 2 more stitches and we're done here. Purl stitch between the 2 bumps, yarn's coming from underneath, I have to go over the cable, pick up this strand and pull it through. This is, ta-da, last stitch. Take off my marker and I'm going inside the little V, coming from underneath and pulling the yarn through. So now I'm going to show you how we've done so far. Now you can see, I'm just gonna zoom out a little bit. Ta-da! Okay, and here you go. This is front needle, outside, red cable, inside, stitches inside and outside. Of course, these stitches look like you're used to knit them, but that's an easy thing. We're gonna switch them in the first row and everything's fine. So now you can see how we really created the beautiful line. Can you see how this stitch just wraps around the neck? Really beautiful. And we lost a little gap here. Sometimes in order to perform this, you have to cast on an extra stitch in order to close that little gap. Sometimes it's a problem to have one stitch more, sometimes it's not a problem. You have to decide. What you can do, you just, whenever in the next step we're going to return to that area, you can put a marker and then it reminds you, okay, now I have to knit two together in order to lose that one extra stitch. But if you do it, you have to remember we have to do it on the back side as well in order to keep the same stitch count. But in most cases, it doesn't really matter if there's one or two stitches more. Or let's say it matters if there's one stitch more. Sometimes it doesn't matter if it's two stitches more, because you have to remember what pattern you're knitting it. And since I want to knit a 1x1 rib, 2 stitches more don't matter. 1 stitch more would break the pattern. So I have to get rid of the stitch, because if we starting with a knit stitch, we have to end the round with a purl stitch. Otherwise 2 knit stitches would bump into each other, and that's not a good thing. Okay, so what I said, we finished this. So I'm going to finish this side, and it's easy because remember we have to have the same, if we split this in half, we have to have the same stitch count on this side and on that side. So I'm just going to do the same thing on this side, and I'm going to see you back at the beginning of the round. Okay, I am done, and I'm back at the beginning of the round, and as you can see, I picked up all the stitches, I counted them, so like there's the same amount of stitches in the back and on the front. So I need, this is a little thing, here's a little thread. This is from weaving in the end, and I just left it just to show you that this is going to be inside here, and it's gone forever. Okay, so now this is one of the hardest part, as I told you in the beginning, because we need this, and no, but now it's all done, and all we have to do is knit, knit, knit. Okay, so now I told you I'm always very organized, so now we have to organize our knitting. Concerning magic loop, what I do now, we're proceeding with our blue needle. I'm gonna split the work in half, and then I'm just gonna pull a loop and pull a little loop through. Can you see? This is part of the magic loop technique. We don't need for now the red needle. So what I'm doing, it's my favorite thing, I stash everything away. If it's out of sight, it's not there. Okay, I put it in the inside of the sweater. And sometimes I even do this. Like sometimes when I'm working, I just put it through, try not to pierce through the yarn, but like this. And then everything's gone. And this gives me the freedom to work. Okay. From now on, it's going to be easy. I'm going to rearrange my stitches. What I usually do, if I'm knitting in the round, I'm using my left needle. If I knit in the round, I have to say, because if you're knitting back and forth, of course, you have to have the same needle size. But in the round, my preferable method is I'm using a smaller needle, 1 or 2 sizes smaller than the one I'm actually knitting. And because it gives me the freedom to move the stitches much easier, and instead sometimes you really have to push hard, so this is much easier. This is my loop for magic loop, pushing the stitches to the tip of the needle, and then I pull on this side my knitting needle, and now I have the freedom to knit in whatever direction I want to. Okay, I'm just going to zoom in a little bit more. Okay, here we go. Put my little swatch back in place. Pick up, where's my working yarn? Here's my working yarn. Pick it up. And of course, the good thing, because I'm using these two different colors, is you really want to separate the back from the front, because sometimes you may end up using the wrong needle from the back side and you start knitting and then all stitches end up on the inside needle, and we don't want that. We want to separate the work, and this is why you should really be careful using the blue needle and keeping the other needle out of sight and out of your way. Okay, so now I'm just gonna knit my stitches. Super easy. Knit, knit, knit. And on this needle, the stitches are in the right orientation, so basically have to knit it. Nothing to it. The hard part is over so far. Keep on knitting. We're just gonna knit in total 4 rounds. It actually depends on, I mean, of course, on your pattern. I will tell you how many rounds you knit, but if you just want to transform your neckband from another pattern, how high you should, I'm just going to take this for reference, how high this is going to be, your little neckband, before you actually start the 1x1 pattern, depends on the yarn size, on the weight of your yarn. And of course, bulky yarn, you only need maybe 2 or 3 rounds, but this is actually DK weight yarn. I usually knit 3 or 5 rounds, depending on also the inside. Let me show you this, because here you can see this takes up, these are the garter edge stitches. They take up a little bit more room than the bound of stitches. So we have to get those 2 sides to cover, to enclose this. So if we don't have enough rows, it's not gonna cover this, and it's just gonna look bulky. So in this case, I'm opting for 4 rows or rounds on both sides to cover this and make it really beautiful. Okay, now here we go. I'm gonna finish this. I'm just gonna finish this until we break the sides from the magic loop technique, so you can see, in case you don't know how to do the magic loop. I'm just gonna knit real quick now, because there's nothing to it. It's just a knit round. I'm gonna reach my spot. I'm gonna split the sides. Okay, almost there. In this, I'm showing you the continental method. If you're a thrower, same thing. Don't worry, you just carry the yarn in the other hand. Okay, that's the last stitch on this needle. I'm gonna pull. You always have to pull on the right end, because sometimes if I would pull here, I would pull off all my stitches. So I have to pull on the other end. Pull, pull, pull. Turn the work around. Okay. And then I'm gonna push my stitches on this needle. And you see how easy that works, because we're working here from a smaller needle. Grab my yarn and then pull out a loop for my working needle. And I'm ready to go back to the beginning of the round. This is what I'm going to do now. I'm going to knit another 3 rounds on top of this round. So that makes 4 rounds. and I'll see you back at the marker. Okay guys, I'm back at the marker. I finished 4 rounds in total, and you can see it's a little roll neck. It's really beautiful. That's the back side. Okay, we're done with the outside. Now we have to take care of the inside. I turn around the work. We now can get rid of, at least we hide our needles. Take out the red ones for the inside. And this I'm just gonna put in here or somewhere so it's out of the way. Ta-da! Okay. Okay, now we've knit the outside, now we have to take care of the inside. Of course, now we could pick up, let's do the magic loop thing first. You know, we split it in half and we're just gonna pull a loop. Okay. Of course, I could go and knit this direction. The problem being is we need on the outside, or let's say the inside, we need knit rows. So what I had to do now is we had to purl all the stitches if we were to go that direction. So my tip is I turn around the work and we're gonna go the opposite. We don't have to pull everything inside out, but we just turn around the work and going the opposite direction. I'm gonna pull my loop, and remember I'm using a smaller size smaller needle. Put the stitches back on the needle, pull on my working needle, screw it a bit tighter. Okay. Pull it out. Using this is the little tail we're not using. Gonna weave it in at the very last. We actually can use the yarn. We don't have to cut it or use a new ball of yarn. We're just gonna use the yarn. So I'm just gonna put it to the back needle. And I'm gonna zoom in again. So you see everything from close up, first row. Maybe a little bit closer. And where's my little swatch? Place it here. Okay, here we are. Picking my yarn, taking my working needle, and let's see what we're facing here. This is what I was talking about before when we were wrapping the stitches around the cable, that the stitches will be in different orientation, like these little V's we had in the beginning, you know, or you can still see here. So what we have to do, we just have to knit the stitches, the turn stitches from the back loop. There's different knitting techniques. Maybe some of you know there's what's it called? Not continental knitters. Oh my God, I forgot the word for it. They purl the stitches in a different way, so the stitches land on your needle in a different orientation. Combination knitters, that's the word I was missing, combination knitters. So they always get the knit stitches because they purled in a different fashion, so the stitches end up like this on the needle. And the way to do it is, basically it's also like an SSK, you know, when you put the stitches in a different way. So we're just gonna go through with the needle like this through and knit it through the back loop. It's super easy. Knit it, pull it off. The next stitch, because we have these little V's, you know, we're just gonna knit it straight like we used to. Next stitch, turn through the back loop. It's going to be a straight stitch through the back loop because we don't want to cross it. because the stitches look much better when they're this way. Okay, and as you can see, every other stitch has turned its orientation, which we don't mind because we know how to fix it. And basically it's only the first round that we're encountering this problem, because as you can see, they look all perfect once they've been knitted. Okay, I just go along. Same thing here, I'm just going ahead to the spots where we split the needle again. So I think you got the pattern that one stitch, like a regular stitch, the next stitch through the back loop, one by one. And the most important thing is, I always have to mention that you have the same stitch count on the back needle and on the front needle. This is the most crucial, because in the end we're gonna knit those two sides together, and of course you don't want to end up with too many stitches on one needle. And always remember, when you're decreasing stitches, when you remember when we're trying to close that little hole, you have to do it on the first row. Actually, on this row we're working on right now. If you decrease, or you choose to decrease stitches, you have to do it on that round as well. So, and we didn't do it, so I don't have to do it now, because we have a perfect stitch count. Okay, and this is our little magic loop trick again. Pulling on the loop, turn your work, put the stitches back on the skinny needle. Okay, get the working yarn, pull out your working needle, and here you go. Same thing, stitch is in different orientation, so we work it through the back loop, and off we go again. So I'm going to do the same thing because nothing has changed. We just turned the work around, and I'm just gonna knit 4 rounds in a row. Sounds good, right? 4 rounds in a row, and I see you back at the marker. Okay, back at the marker. And this is what it looks like. Now you can see we have 4 rows this way, 4 rows the other way. Now we're just want to close our little tunnel. Can you see this? And this is how it's going to end up looking like. It's really beautiful. You can see from the inside, there's no difference to the outside. Okay, now comes the fun part. Take out your needles. Now we're going back to our main direction, because now we're just gonna turn it to the outside. We're just gonna knit this way. Now I'm organizing all my needles, my cables, my working yarn. To me, this is always the most important, to have an organized working space. Okay, some of you might know the 3 needle bind off and how to do it. So what we're going to do is similar to the 3 needle bind off, except we're not binding off stitches. We're just going to knit them together. So I'm preparing my magic loop again. So this time for both needles. This is the blue one. We're on the same area. The red one. Okay. And then just gonna slide my stitches back on the blue needle. Beginning of the round. Usually when I'm starting I actually use the beginning of the round to work my, how do you say, my magic loop, so I don't have to carry a marker on the needle, because every time you reach the round, then the marker might drop. So I visually remember, remind myself this is the beginning of the round, and where the needle split, this is the beginning. Okay, so with this out of the way, we're just gonna start. Important, don't use the red needle, because we're gonna get rid of the red needle right now. Okay, take this out of the way. Just gonna pull my working needle, my outside needle, the blue needle, and I'm going to slide the stitches. I'm gonna use my little gauge swatch again so you can see, and of course we're gonna zoom in again. Perfect. I'm taking my working needle, and now what I have to do, we're just gonna knit always the first stitch of those needles. We're just gonna knit them together. The thing is, I'm going to create a 1x1 rib later on. So what I have to do, I knit those two stitches, or knit both needles in pattern, meaning knit one together, purl one together, or purl two together. I have to say knit two together, purl two together, knit two together. Okay. If you were to knit a 2x2 rib, you would do the same thing. You would knit two together, knit two together, purl two together, purl two together, and so on. It's always depending on your pattern. Sometimes if you just want to create a roll neck, you're just gonna knit everything together, knit the stitches, and then it kind of curls up your little neckband. But this is depending on your design, on your taste, and of course on the pattern you're knitting. So with this out of the way, let's start. Working yarn in the back, because we knit the first two stitches together. I'm gonna insert my needle as if to knit in the first stitch, and really take care so you go right in between the stitch, because we don't want to lose any stitches on the way. So first needle, first stitch, right in there. Next on the back, go right in there. We knitted this stitch already, no problem. We're just gonna knit it again, because we're just gonna knit these two stitches together. Pull carefully, pull through both loops, and take it one by one off the needles. Ta-da! First stitch, knit together. Now purl stitch. There's actually two options. Usually I'm always for the safer options. Sometimes it's quicker. There's people, they like to cable without cable needles. I am the one that always uses cable needles, because I can't be bothered losing any stitches. Same thing here. First, I show you the, let's say, technique that requires less steps, but sometimes you might lose the back stitch. So you enter as if to purl into the back stitch. You enter as if to purl in the front stitch, and then you purl both stitches together. This feels a bit more uncomfortable than knitting two stitches together. You probably experienced it on several occasions, purling two together, or SSP, purl two stitches through the back loop, and things like this. They always suck, to be honest. I think. So we take these stitches back off the needle, so we purled that stitch. Next stitch, easy peasy. Enter front stitch as if to knit, back stitch as if to knit, knit two together off the needle. So now I'm just gonna show you the safe way, at least I think so. I'm just gonna take the stitch from the back needle, take it off, and put it on the front needle. And now it's easy. Put the yarn in front and we just purl two together. I think this is, for at least for me, much easier than, see now, here we go. And I take it off the needle. So I know I purled both stitches. There's nothing that slides off my needle. Easy to see. Another knit two together. Again, make sure you enter both stitches and take it off. The safe purl, let's call it. Put it back on the front needle. Enter both stitches and purl both stitches together and off your needle. And this is what we're just gonna do all the way until, oops, again, this way, go through, take it off, rearrange the stitches, and now you can really see goodbye edge stitches, goodbye anything that we don't want to see. You're just gonna disappear in here. I'm gonna push the stitches to the needle tip. Going to take off that stitch, put it back on. I'm not gonna change the direction of the stitch. I'm just gonna put it as if to purl and put it the same way back on the front needle. I'm just gonna take this one, it's annoying me, it's sound, so I'm gonna take it away. Okay, here we go again. So purl stitch, knit, knit, and off the needle. Gonna push, okay, take it off, put it back on the front needle, purl, two together, knit, two together. And this is really fun because now you can really see how this creates this perfect edge that we love. Okay, so I'm going to continue and I see you a couple of stitches before the end of the round because I think it's so rewarding when you get rid of the red needle, and then I see you there. So here is our glorious moment. We're just a couple of stitches in from the end. And the great thing is, perfect stitch count. There's not one stitch more or less. See, last stitch on my needle here is the purl stitch. And knit two together. Take it off the needle. And last time, be careful that you don't lose a stitch because one stitch on each needle is kind of slippery. Put it on. Ta-da! Goodbye, red needle. Off you go. And we're left with just one stitch to purl. Purl two together. We're done. So this is it. And you know what? I'm just gonna finish up and yeah, let's knit another 3 or 2 rounds and then I'll show you what it looks like. And of course I have a couple of tricks for you, so keep on waiting for me. Okay, here we go again. And look how beautiful it looks. I added a couple more knit and purl rows, rounds. And now you see how beautiful this is from the inside and the outside. I told you in the very beginning, you saw the green sweater when I introduced this little neckband to you. It's going to be for a reversible men's sweater. The reason why I'm using this is because I love, as I told you, the fisherman's rib. And I'm just going to turn the work inside out so you can see it just looks stunning from the inside as well. And so no matter however you wear your clothes, your item, it always will look perfect. Let me just show you the other side. Okay, here we go. This is it. I think it's really a stunning way to finish your project. The only thing that you need is just to bind off your stitches, and there you go. Just want to mention, in another video I'm going to show you a perfect way to bind off those stitches as well, using the Italian tubular bind off in the round. And I think this complements the whole thing because the bind off just looks gorgeous, fabulous. So but I'm just gonna show it to you in a different video, but you might as well choose any bind off you like, any neckband you like. You could use a 2x2 rib, you could use a roll neck. I'm just going to show you how that will look like. Imagine this is my little swatch. Instead of knit one, purl one, I'm just going to zoom in again. Here you go. So instead of knit one, purl one, you just knit all the stitches together, and then you just knit a couple of rounds in stockinette stitch, and you just bind off your stitches, and then it's going to look like something like this. So this is the edge that will roll over the little double edge. Look how beautiful this is. It's like just a little simple roll over. It's so beautiful. It looks even beautiful if you knit it in two colors. It's like a beautiful design element. So this is another option. Another option, because or why you should use this technique, is if you imagine you're knitting a cardigan and you have a neck edge like this, but the cardigan closes, and sometimes when you open it, you're going to see the inside of it. And then when you open it up, it just gonna looks like this on the outside and on the inside. And I think it's just a marvelous, beautiful finish. It's like a couture finish. Like, yeah, I think it's so satisfying when you finish your project like this. Also, you could use it if you're just going for a slip over, and you're just gonna use it around your armhole. Stunning finish. Or even sometimes, even if you want to use it on a very simple sweater on the bottom of your sweater, the possibilities are really endless. So now we're not finished yet, because we have to, and I think it's always really satisfying when we close and we weave in the end. So I have a blunt darning needle. I just put it inside, loop it through, and now I'm gonna zoom in again because this is my little swatch. Because there's a moment when we change direction, and this is like a, how do you call it, like a wrap and turn. It's gonna leave us with a little tiny gap. So we're using the end tail, and we're just gonna go inside here, because remember, this is a little tube. So we enter this tube and we're looking, here's the hole. I'm gonna come out here, and then I want to close it. Same thing, you remember when we were closing the front of the neckline. I'm just gonna pick a thread, this one here, it's like a little pearl, insert my needle, pull it through, and I'm just gonna look for a thread on the opposite side, like almost like a duplicate stitch. I'm running my thread through, and I'm closing this little gap using this yarn, and there's a little loop here. So I'm really playing by ear. I try and error. If I don't like what I did, I just undo it. No big deal. So this looks really good to me. and it's closed on both sides. Okay, all we have to do is anchor the yarn. I'm just gonna go back here, going through this little purple, anchor my yarn, and then I'm going, and this is really satisfying, I'm going right inside this little tube we created, being careful not to leave it so it doesn't come out on the other side as well. So I'm going, running it right through it for a little while. And then I'm trying to come out of some V, like a knit stitch. Can you see it here? Pull the yarn through, pull it tight. And now this is my favorite way of cutting yarn. This is like a 100% merino yarn, so it's gonna felt. So I'm gonna use this effect that it's felting. I'm not gonna cut it straight. This is how I do it. I pull on the yarn a little bit, so it kind of snaps back inside when I cut the yarn. I'm taking my scissors, or this is like a yarn clipper, and then I put it right in between the two plates, and I'm not closing it fully. I'm just gonna, it's like teasing. Can you see? I'm slightly teasing the yarn. And this is gonna give a lot of little, can you see, little hairs. So I'm gonna tease it, tease it, tease it, tease it, and gone. Looks like a split end. And this is what I actually want to have, because if I'm going to pull it inside, it's gonna disappear forever. Whenever you wash it, it's gonna kind of create a little felt within this tube, and it's not gonna show up ever again. So I'm going to pull it. Here you go. It's gone. So this is it. I'm gonna turn it around. And then I have another tip for you, because I was going through my needle stash, and guess what I found? This is, I think I should have used it all the way, but I found, I'm gonna go out a little, okay. And this is what I found in my stash. And this is a really helpful tool. It's called a Tunisian crochet hook. Tunisian crochet is a special technique. It's almost in between crochet and knitting. It's using, you can see it's the same system. Let me show you, as my knitting needles, my circulars. This is a different system. This is here, and this is a Knit Pro system. I didn't know that here is making Tunisian crochet hooks. So this is a Knit Pro system. I don't use Knit Pro that much anymore because I don't like their cables. I think these are much softer. So, but what you can do, you hook your crochet hook to your system, and then you just keep on going. I'll show you on this way. In and out, get a stitch. Let me show you with a little thread. Go inside, grab your working yarn, create a stitch, and then you can just slide it off on your cable. And this is so amazing, I think, because you can pick up as many stitches as you want, and then in the end you detach the Tunisian crochet hook and attach your knitting needle, and off you go. I think this is a real fabulous way to do this. Okay, so all you have to do is bind off all your stitches any way you like, but I recommend you to watch the video about the Italian tubular bind off. If you liked the video, hit a like and subscribe. I would appreciate that. And if you're interested in my knitting patterns, I'm going to add my Ravelry store in the comments. Go check it out. There's many beautiful patterns, men, women, accessories, and they all use my techniques. And usually when you buy a pattern of mine, it's a digital pattern. Of course you can print it, but there's all different links for all the techniques that I'm using. So before you wander off and you don't know what to do, just click on the link and it will show you the video and you just explore the new technique. And another recommendation, whenever you knit a gauge swatch, try to get used to a new technique. Let's say use the Italian cast on to cast on for your swatch. It's only a couple stitches. Try it out so you get familiar, and in the end try the Italian bind off or whatever bind off you're new to. Try it out, get familiar, and this way you knit like a pro. Okay, thanks for watching. Enjoy the technique.